Welcome everyone. Something different happened this past week at Mass. We celebrated the Feast of the Assumption of Mary, August 15th. And periodically this happens throughout the year. A feast is so important that it kind of bumps the Sunday liturgy. Well, the Feast of the Assumption is one of them. I grew up in Olney, and I remember I was a little child, and I decided to scare my mom. Now, my mom was pregnant. So I hear my mom go into the kitchen, and then I sneak up to the kitchen, but stayed outside in the dining room. And I must have been there for a half hour. I didn't say a word, didn't make a noise. So all of a sudden, my mom's about ready to leave the kitchen, and this is my opportunity. So she walks through the door, and I spring out, and I scare her. And I'll never forget waiting there that long and not making any noise. I'll also never forget my mom's expression. My mom was pregnant, and she turned to me, and she said, "Jimmy, you shouldn't have done that. I could have lost the baby." Now, she was late into the pregnancy, and I didn't quite understand what that meant, lose the baby. But my mother was really afraid. So we're going to read the first reading from Sunday's Mass, and it's also about a pregnant woman who's afraid of losing her child. And if this ever happened, the consequences would be terrible. Let's go to the Connections workbook. Let's go to the daily personal prayer guide section for this week. We're going to go to Monday, and there we will find in bullet form a few points that may help us to appreciate this first reading. The first reading describes a vision of heaven which is spectacular and frightening at the same time. A great and wonderful woman who is pregnant appears in the vision, and then a dragon appears who wants to destroy the woman and her child. The woman gives birth to the child, it's a son, and he's immediately snatched up into heaven. The woman escapes into the desert. Now, the woman represents the early church that was being persecuted because the church was trying to bring Jesus, the child, into the world. The church today uses this reading to help explain Mary's role in salvation history. So let's hear this first reading. It's from the book of Revelation. God's temple in heaven was opened, and the Ark of the Covenant could be seen in the temple. A great sign appeared in the sky, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a crown of 12 stars. She was with child and wailed aloud in pain as she labored to give birth. Then another sign appeared in the sky. It was a huge red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns, and on its head were 7 diadems. His tail swept away a third of the stars of the sky and hurled them down to the earth. Then the dragon stood before the woman about to give birth, to devour her child when she gave birth. She gave birth to a son, a male child, destined to rule all the nations with an iron fist. Her child was caught up to God and his throne. The woman herself fled into the desert, where she had a place prepared by God. Then I heard a loud voice in heaven say, "Now have salvation and power come, and the kingdom of our God, and the authority of his anointed one." The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So ideally this is Monday in the week after the celebration of our Assumption of Our Lady. I would encourage you to reflect on this reading today. Read it again out loud. And this is always the kind of prompt for each one of the readings at Mass. Prayerfully reflect and journal on the first reading and pay special attention to how it may relate to your life. I'd encourage you to do that. How you're like Mary, bringing Jesus Christ into the world, or how you're like the church, bringing Christ into the world. Maybe you've experienced some threats in your life. And think that way and learn to pray with these readings. God bless you.